Hey guys, Steve here with Sculpting Stone. This is going to be the first of a video tutorial series on stone sculpture that Kelly and I have been wanting to do. And this in particular is going to focus on finishing techniques. The word finish in stone sculpture doesn't mean anything in particular. There's a notion that finishing a stone sculpture is bringing the surface of the stone to a polish or a hone or some other smooth surface. But as many of you probably know, that's actually not the case. And many of the most famous examples of stone sculpture that come to mind, even for non-practitioners like Michelangelo's David, are not at a gloss polish. They would have been finished with a rasp or other abrasives. And there are certain parts of that sculpture and other sculptures which are textured. So finish can mean a polish, and we're going to go over the different procedures and materials you would need to achieve that. But finish can also mean anything. So for example, this piece is a bone. It looks like a vertebrae that I sculpted out of Champlain black limestone, and in some places I did want to achieve sort of a luster, so there's kind of a polish or a high hone. And then in other areas I was looking to keep it rough, so actually this is a rasped surface here, and this, I don't know how well you guys can see it here, but that's a chiseled surface, okay? And that was achieved with something like this, okay, or different chisels that have this sort of like castle turret, which I love. Sort of my go-tos in terms of a tooth chisel. I'll talk about that in a different episode. So that for me was finish in this case, okay? And you know, sometimes I've even wanted a rougher finish. So if I needed to approximate some kind of a natural surface, maybe I was using a bush hammer or even a pickaxe. A sculpture that Kelly and I worked on up in Rutland, Vermont, which celebrates Andrea Mead Lawrence. It's in the center of Rutland, and we had to put a snowy mountain and get all this snow texture and sort of like the billowing snow coming out the back of her skis. She was a downhill skier, and so that was all kind of rough texture and a variety of different tools to achieve that. There are endless possibilities for texture and sort of finish, but I'll try to cover as many as I can in this series, as well as the sort of traditional approach to refining the surface all the way up to and including a polish. One other thing that I think is important to mention at the outset is that there is overlap between where the shaping ends and where the refining of the surface begins. And the reason for that is that we only have two techniques at our disposal for working stone. One is percussion, so in other words, using usually a hammer and chisel to strike the stone. A long time ago it was one stone against another stone, but now we have steel against stone to break up the stone, to reduce its size and to give it form. And the other tool we have is abrasion, which is taking something harder than the stone and rubbing it to wear the stone down the way we want to. So with modern technology, abrasive tools are also spinning very fast now because we put them on power equipment, and we can use that to actually shape. So a tool that many of you may be familiar with, an electroplated cutting disc, okay? We put that onto an angle grinder, right? And this is just an abrasive which is spinning very, very fast, and when it enters the stone, it makes what looks to be an incision. It's like we're cutting the stone, but it's actually just abrading a very thin line into it, right? And then we often will use these same tools to kind of shape the stone, or we'll use something that looks like this, a grinding cup wheel, okay? And so the abrasives kind of start during this shaping process often nowadays, and then kind of continue to where we're using them to refine the surface. Another tool that you'll see used in both capacities is silicon carbide. So we can have silicon carbide, the silicon carbide like this that goes onto an angle grinder. This is not so practical for sculpture. This is more for doing tables and architecture, okay? But it's basically an artificial stone which is bound together with some kind of resin, and that spins around very fast and wears down the stone that you're working on. Or you can have burrs like this, which will go into a die grinder. Okay, this one happens to have a diamond tool in it right now, but this will go in here and spin around very fast and wear away the stone. But here I'm usually using it to shape as well as to refine the surface. And it's the same material that later I will use in a loose form like this to kind of finish the sculpture and take out some of the marks that I don't want to be there. So that's enough yapping for me. Let's get into something.
Okay, I'm going to start here by putting on some anti-vibration gloves. These are inexpensive gloves that you can find anywhere online, Amazon for example, and they have really helped me when using power tools to dampen the vibration. So I'm going to work on this vessel that Kelly designed. This is in Danby, Vermont marble. It has these little legs on them, and I'm going to use this electroplated grinding cup on an angle grinder to take out any weird bumps and facets that remain from prior chiseling and cutting. And I think one of the advantages of using a power tool like this is that you can swivel the piece and kind of look at it from a distance. You're not right up on it, your face isn't right on it, and I'm turning it and I'm constantly looking at the silhouettes, the contours, especially when I have a darker background and I'm seeing irregularities and bumps that I want to take out. One side note is that you'll see I'm working on sandbags, which I've made. Those are obviously jeans. Take old pants or jeans and zip ties. So you don't even need a sewing machine. You can just use a zip tie and cinch one end, pour any inexpensive sand in there, sand that you get from the beach, or you can just buy from a hardware store, and they make great sandbags. So I'm just going to rotate the piece and work with this directional light from the window, which shows me all the little facets I want to get rid of. And I'm going to have to get in between those legs, so I'm going to switch up my tool. If you can afford to have two angle grinders, this is really helpful. Keep two different tool heads. I'm turning up the speed. With a diamond tool like this, you want it at maximum speed, because at a slower speed it's going to dull the diamond abrasive and you want it to continuously microfracture as you work. So I'm using this conical burr. This also is electroplated with diamond, which is suitable for marble and softer stones. You do not want to use these kinds of electroplated tools with granite or harder stones or even sandstones, abrasive stones. It's going to wear those diamonds out very quickly. So here again, I am just looking in the light. I'm going to turn it constantly and observe it from as many different angles as I can. And as you can see, when I use a tool like this, I'm constantly moving the tool, because this tool is going to very quickly create additional divots or undesirable marks unless I'm constantly keeping it moving. And I would tell you that the pressure that I'm exerting is very light. I'm just kind of caressing the form here. You develop a relationship with the stone you're working with and the sculpture you're working on and the tool that you're using, and you can modulate your pressure accordingly. So I've done all I can with diamond tools. It's time to move on.